There is a specific kind of silence that you have curated. It isn't just the absence of noise, it is a structure, a fortress. You've spent years, perhaps decades, laying the bricks of this fortress, mortar by mortar, creating a world where you are entirely, perfectly self-sufficient. To the outside world, you appear composed. You are the one who solves the problems. You are the one who never asks for help. You are the one who seems to require nothing from anyone. They call you low maintenance. They call you strong. They call you an introvert. But deep down, in the quiet hours of the morning when the world is asleep and your defenses are down, you know that this isn't just about preferring a quiet room or a good book. You know that your self-sufficiency isn't a preference, it is a scar. It is a survival mechanism that has outlived its war. You have become so good at not needing anyone that you have forgotten how to let anyone in. And the terrible irony of your fortress is that the walls you built to keep pain out are now the very same walls keeping love out. You are safe, yes, but you are starving. We often confuse introversion with hyper-independence. We look at someone who withdraws and assume they simply enjoy their own company. And while that is part of it, for you there is a darker undercurrent. This is the psychology of the self-sufficient introvert, not the person who chooses solitude, but the person who feels compelled toward it because reliance on others feels dangerous. It feels like walking onto a bridge that you know, deep in your bones, is going to collapse. So you decide to swim the river alone. Is it harder? Yes. Is it exhausting? Unbelievably so. But at least you know you won't fall. Let's talk about that exhaustion. It is not the tiredness that comes from a long day at work. It is a soul-deep fatigue. It is the weight of carrying your own universe on your shoulders because you cannot conceive of sharing the load. You might catch yourself thinking, it's just easier if I do it myself. You say this about small things, washing the dishes, finishing a project, booking a flight, but you also say it about the big things, processing grief, handling anxiety, navigating heartbreak. You metabolize your pain in secret. You treat your emotions like contraband that must be hidden away, processed, and neutralized before you step back out into the light. Why? Why is the thought of asking for help so physically repulsive to you? Why does vulnerability feel less like an opening and more like a surrender? To understand this, we have to look back. We have to look at the architecture of your childhood. The roots of extreme self-sufficiency rarely lie in a happy, secure past where your needs were met with consistency. Instead, they often grow in the soil of emotional neglect or chaotic instability. Imagine a child. Let's call him the invisible child. This child quickly learns that the adults in the room are overwhelmed. Maybe they are dealing with their own trauma, addiction, poverty, or perhaps just a profound emotional immaturity. The child realizes with a terrifying clarity that his needs are a burden. When he cries, he isn't comforted, he is ignored, or worse, scolded for being too much. When he asks for help, he is met with a sigh of frustration. So a transaction takes place. A silent contract is signed in the child's mind. I will be easy. I will be low maintenance. I will require nothing. And in exchange, I will be safe. This is the birth of the self-sufficient armor. You learn to shrink. You learn to observe the moods of others like a meteorologist tracking a storm, adjusting your behavior to avoid triggering an outburst. You became the good child, the mature child, the old soul. Adults likely praised you for this. They told you, you're so independent for your age. They didn't realize they were complimenting a trauma response. They didn't see that your independence wasn't a sign of maturity, it was a sign of abandonment. You were parenting yourself because no one else was doing it. As you grew older, this mechanism solidified. It calcified into your personality. What was once a way to survive a chaotic home became your default way of existing in the world. You stopped viewing others as sources of support and started viewing them as variables you couldn't control. People became unpredictable. People became disappointing. But you could control you. You could control your environment, your finances, your emotions, your time. Control became your substitute for intimacy. And so we arrive at the present day. You are likely successful in many areas of your life. Hyper-independent people are often high achievers because they work twice as hard to ensure they never have to rely on anyone.
You have your own money, your own place, your own routines, but there is a phantom pain. It's a subtle ache in the center of your chest that flares up when you see true intimacy between others. Easy, messy, codependent intimacy. You watch a friend call another friend in tears over something trivial, and a part of you judges them. Pull yourself together. Why are you burdening them with that? But another part of you, the part you keep locked in the basement of your fortress, is jealous. You are jealous of the freedom they have to fall apart. You are jealous of the trust they have that someone will catch them. You have never allowed yourself to fall apart because you have never believed there would be a safety net. You are the net. You are the trapeze artist and the net and the audience all at once. This brings us to the concept of the invisible wall. This is the barrier you place between yourself and the world. It's not that you're antisocial. You might be charming, funny, and conversational. You might have friends. You might even be in a relationship. But if you look closely, you will see the wall. You let people in, but only so far. You let them into the foyer of your life, maybe the living room, but the bedroom, the attic, the basement where you keep your fears? No, those doors are locked. You practice what psychologists call counterdependence. While a codependent person feels they cannot survive without a partner, a counterdependent person refuses to acknowledge they need a partner at all. You push people away the moment they get too close. The moment someone tries to take care of you, you feel a spike of anxiety. It feels suffocating. You might pick a fight, or withdraw into silence, or sabotage the connection. You tell yourself, I just need space. But what you really need is control. You are terrified that if you lean on them, they will move and you will faceplant into the concrete. It is a lonely way to live, but the loneliness is familiar. It feels safer than the alternative. Consider the metaphor of the empty well. When you are the strong one, the listener, the fixer, people naturally flock to you to pour out their problems. You are a great container for other people's emotions because you are so composed. You listen, you advise, you absorb. But who pours into you? Your well is constantly being drawn from, but rarely replenished. And because you never ask, people assume you are full. They assume you don't need anything. They don't see that the bottom of your well is dry, cracking under the scorching sun of your own isolation. You might feel a simmering resentment towards the people in your life. You think, why doesn't anyone ask how I am? Why do I always have to reach out first? Why is it always about them? This resentment is a signal. It is your psyche screaming that the balance is off. But here is the hard truth that hurts to hear. You teach people how to treat you. By never showing your need, you have taught them that you have no needs. By never showing your weakness, you have taught them that you are invincible. You have curated a performance of invulnerability so convincing that everyone believes it, except you. There is also a profound shame attached to your needs. This is the micro-trauma of dismissive parenting replaying itself. When you feel lonely or sad or overwhelmed, a voice in your head, your inner critic, lashes out. It says, don't be pathetic, handle it, no one wants to hear this. You feel shame, not just for having the problem, but for having the reaction to the problem. You judge your own humanity. You try to intellectualize your feelings rather than feeling them. You treat your heart like a broken engine that needs a mechanic, not a wound that needs a witness.
This intellectualization is a defense. If you can explain your pain, you don't have to feel it. If you can rationalize your trauma, you don't have to grieve it. But grief that is denied, it does not disappear. It goes underground. It manifests as physical tension, as insomnia, as a low-grade depression that strips the color out of your life. You are functional, but you are not alive. You are surviving, but you are not thriving. And let's talk about the specific anxiety of the ask. The moment you have to ask a favor, even a small one like a ride to the airport or help moving a couch, your body reacts as if you were in physical danger. Your heart races. You script the request in your head 10 times before you say it. You add a dozen disclaimers. No worries if you can't. I can totally figure it out otherwise. Only if it's on your way. You offer an escape hatch before you've even made the request. You are terrified of the no. Why? Because for the hyper-independent, a no isn't just a scheduling conflict. A no is a confirmation of your deepest fear. I am too much. I am a burden.
I was right to never ask. A rejection feels like a catastrophic failure of your system, so you stop asking. You buy the truck so you don't have to ask for help moving. You learn to fix the plumbing so you don't have to call a guy. You become an island, complete with your own power grid and water supply. But islands are lonely places. This lifestyle creates a feedback loop. The more you do alone, the more competent you become. The more competent you become, the less you need others. The less you need others, the more they back away, assuming you want to be left alone. And as they back away, you look out from your fortress and say, "See, I knew it. No one is there for me." You create the very reality you fear. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy written in the ink of your own defenses. We must also address the savior complex that often accompanies this. Because you cannot tolerate your own vulnerability, you project it onto others. You become the rescuer. You find partners or friends who are messy, chaotic, or needy. Why? Because taking care of them gives you a sense of control. It allows you to be close to vulnerability without having to be the one who is vulnerable. You can touch the fire without getting burned. You fix them so you don't have to look at what is broken in you. But eventually you burn out. You resent them for needing you, even though you chose them precisely because they needed you. This is the labyrinth you have built. It is complex, intelligent, and incredibly effective at keeping you safe from rejection. But the air in here is stale. The light is artificial. You are realizing that safety is not the same thing as peace. And you are realizing that you cannot hold the weight of the world forever. Your arms are getting tired. The cracks in the fortress are starting to show. Perhaps that is why you are here, listening to this, because the strategy isn't working anymore. The silence you curated has become deafening. There's a concept in psychology called ambiguous loss. Usually it refers to a loss without closure, like a missing person. But for you, the ambiguous loss is the loss of the self you could have been if you hadn't been forced to be so strong. You grieve the child who wasn't allowed to be a child. You grieve the softness that was calloused over before it could fully form. You look at old photographs of yourself and you don't see a happy kid. You see a little soldier. You see a tiny adult waiting for permission to play, permission that never came.
It is important that you sit with that grief for a moment. Do not rush past it. The realization that you missed out on a fundamental softness, a carefree reliance on others, is heavy. It deserves to be felt. But here is where we must pivot. Here is where we must change the lens through which you view yourself. Up until now, you may have looked at your hyper-independence as a flaw, or perhaps a badge of honor that has become too heavy to wear. You might be judging yourself for being so closed off, for struggling to connect, for feeling so isolated in a room full of people. But I want you to try something different. I want you to look at your fortress, look at those high walls and that locked gate, and I want you to say, "Thank you." This is not a mistake. Your personality is not a mistake. Your self-sufficiency was a brilliant, necessary adaptation. It was the only way you knew how to survive an environment that couldn't hold you. When no one else was steering the ship, you grabbed the wheel. You didn't do it out of arrogance. You did it out of necessity. You saved yourself. The child you were did exactly what they needed to do to get you here, alive and functioning. That armor served its purpose. It protected your softest parts when the world was sharp. The problem isn't the armor itself. The problem is that the war is over, but you are still dressed for battle. You are walking through a meadow, through a life that is relatively safe now, but you are still carrying 100 pounds of steel on your back. You are scanning the horizon for enemies that are no longer there. The survival mechanism has become a barrier to living. You have survived. Now you must learn how to live. And living requires something far more terrifying than independence. It requires interdependence. There is a biological truth that we often ignore in our individualistic society.
Humans are pack animals. We are obligated by our very neurology to connect. Our nervous systems are not designed to self-regulate in a vacuum. They are designed to co-regulate. When a baby cries, it calms down not by thinking rationally, but by being held against a steady heartbeat. We never outgrow this. We simply learn to suppress it. But the body keeps the score. The anxiety, the exhaustion, the numbness you feel, that is your biology protesting your isolation. So, how do we begin to dismantle the fortress? We do not use a wrecking ball. If you try to tear down your walls overnight, if you try to suddenly become completely vulnerable and dependent, you will panic. Your system will go into shock, and you will rebuild those walls twice as high the next day. No, we do not destroy the fortress. We simply install a door, and we leave it slightly ajar. This brings us to the practice of the tiny ask. Healing from hyperindependence is a form of exposure therapy. You have to expose yourself to the thing you fear, reliance, in doses so small that they don't trigger your fight or flight response. Start with something that feels almost trivial. Ask a stranger for the time, even if you have a phone. Ask a colleague to clarify a confusing email, even if you could figure it out yourself with 20 minutes of research. Ask a friend to pick a restaurant because you don't have the mental energy to decide. Notice what happens in your body when you do this. You will feel a twinge of resistance. A voice will say, "I should just do it myself. I'm bothering them." Acknowledge that voice, and then do it anyway. And then, and this is the crucial part, watch what happens next. The world will not collapse. The person will not scream at you. In fact, they will likely be happy to help. You will realize that the catastrophe you have been preparing for is a ghost. It isn't real. As you get comfortable with the tiny asks, you can move to the emotional ajar. You don't have to pour your heart out to everyone you meet. You don't have to weep openly if that feels unsafe. But try to share just 10% more of your internal world than you usually do. If someone asks how you are and you are having a terrible week, instead of the automatic "I'm fine," try saying, "I'm actually a bit drained this week, but I'm managing." That's it. You didn't ask them to fix it. You didn't dump your trauma. You just opened the door an inch. You signaled to the other person, "I am human. I have limits." And in doing so, you gave them permission to be human too. This is the secret that the self-sufficient introvert often misses. Your vulnerability is a gift to others. When you are always strong, always perfect, always the fixer, you unintentionally make the people around you feel inadequate. You make them feel like their messiness is a flaw compared to your composure. But when you admit you are tired, when you ask for help, you level the playing field. You create a space where intimacy can actually grow. Intimacy is not created in perfection. It is created in the cracks. It is the shared experience of being imperfect together. There is a metaphor in nature that is far more sustainable than the fortress, the aspen grove. On the surface, aspen trees look like individual solitary trees, but underground they are all connected by a single massive root system. They are one organism. If one tree is sick, the others send nutrients through the roots to support it. They do not stand alone. They stand together. This is interdependence. It is not weakness. It is resilience. A single tree can be blown over by a storm. A grove creates a windbreak that protects them all. You have been trying to be the single tree on a windy hill. It is time to remember the roots. But to do this, to truly connect, you must address the inner manager. This is the part of you that is obsessed with control, the part that scripts conversations, that plans for every contingency, that refuses to let anyone see you without your makeup or your armor or your wit. You have to have a conversation with this manager. You have to say, I know you are trying to keep me safe. I know you are terrified that if we let go, we will be hurt again. But we are safe now. We are adults. We can handle a no. We can handle a disappointment. We don't need to control everything to be okay. You must learn to distinguish between unsafe vulnerability and uncomfortable vulnerability. Unsafe vulnerability is sharing your deepest trauma with someone who has proven they are abusive or dismissive. That is dangerous, and your walls should stay up for those people. But uncomfortable vulnerability is sharing a need with a kind, safe person who loves you simply because you aren't used to doing it. Do not confuse the discomfort of growth with the danger of harm. This process also requires reparenting. You have to become the parent to your inner child that you never had. When that child feels lonely or overwhelmed, instead of ignoring them or telling them to toughen up, which is what was done to you, you must turn inward with compassion. You must say, I see that you are struggling. It's okay. I'm here. We don't have to do this alone. Let's call a friend. Let's take a break. You have to prove to that inner child that you are the safety net, and because you are the safety net, you are allowed to reach out to others to help hold the net up. There will be days when you fail, days when the fortress feels like the only option, days when you ghost your friends and retreat into your cave because the noise of the world is too much. That is okay. Forgive yourself. You are unlearning decades of neural wiring. It is a slow turning of a very large ship. But as you practice this, as you slowly lower the drawbridge, you will notice something shifting. The exhaustion will begin to lift. The weight on your shoulders will lighten, not because the load is smaller, but because you are no longer carrying it entirely alone. You will realize that people want to be there for you, that people feel closer to you when you need them, that being low maintenance was never the price of admission for love. Real love, the kind that heals, is not a transaction. It is given because you exist. So here is the final truth, the one I want you to carry with you into the silence of your night. You do not have to earn your place in this world by being useful. You do not have to pay rent for the space you occupy by fixing everyone else's problems while hiding your own. You are allowed to be messy. You are allowed to be needy. You are allowed to be complicated. The goal is not to become a dependent person who cannot function alone. You will always be strong. That is your nature. You will always be capable. The goal is simply to have the choice, to have the option to put the bag down, to have the option to say, I can't do this today, and hear a voice back say, that's okay, I've got you. The fortress kept you alive, but the garden is where you grow. It is time to unlock the gate. It is time to let the fresh air in. It is time to let yourself be held. Because you have held yourself for long enough.